The money you don't have today is the exact result of the knowledge you refuse to acquire because you say you can't afford it. But the truth is that your wallet is only empty because your mind is locked in scarcity. Today, with this story, you will discover how this phrase is the padlock that keeps your extreme poverty protected from any opportunity and how to free yourself from it. Samuel always wanted to change his life, but whenever an opportunity to change his life appeared in his path, an inner voice screamed louder than his ambition. "I can't afford it," as if it were a mantra of protection against risk. He didn't realize that this small sentence was, in fact, the padlock that locked his life in a dark room. With every refusal, he convinced his brain that scarcity was his only and immutable financial reality. Samuel's mind was trained to see only the price of things, completely ignoring the value they could generate. He saw a course or a work tool as a loss of money, and not as an investment in freedom. This pattern of thinking created an invisible barrier that prevented any abundance from knocking on his door in a real way. While he saved pennies out of fear of the future, he lost fortunes for not having the courage to bet on himself. He lived defensively, protecting the little he had while the world out there rewarded the audacious. This frequency of "I don't have money" became Samuel's identity, shaping the way he interacted with every person. He exuded an energy of need that pushed away business partners and opportunities that required a growth mindset. His eyes were focused on what was missing in his wallet, and because of that, he became blind to the doors that were already unlocked. He believed he needed money to start, without understanding that he needed to start in order to finally have the money he desired. But an unexpected invitation would make him question whether his biggest problem was really his bank balance. Samuel believed he was a master of saving because he always chose the path that didn't cost him a single cent immediately. He spent hours looking for free shortcuts, without realizing that he was throwing away his most valuable asset: time. This preventive poverty mindset kept him busy with mediocre tasks that led nowhere. While he took pride in not spending, his bank account remained stagnant, reflecting the lack of investment in his own ability. He was saving copper coins while letting gold bars pass straight through his tired hands. Samuel's financial myopia prevented him from seeing beyond the next bill, due at the end of the month. For him, any expense that wasn't food or rent seemed like a dangerous luxury and completely out of his reach. He didn't understand that wealth is built through the strategic circulation of value and investments, and not merely by accumulating crumbs. His vision was limited by scarcity, which made him make decisions based on fear of loss and never on the possibility of gain. He was building a wall around his small comfort zone without noticing that the wall would turn into a tomb. The world around Samuel seemed to conspire to confirm his beliefs that everything was expensive and inaccessible for someone like him. He attracted conversations about lack of money, economic crises, and the impossibility of moving up in life without having initial capital. This bubble of pessimism fed his voice of scarcity, making it the only absolute truth he could conceive. He felt safe in his poverty because it was familiar, while investment seemed like a leap into a bottomless abyss. However, a conversation about the real cost of inertia would make him face a kind of loss he had never calculated. Samuel had never stopped to add up how much his hesitation cost him in terms of years of life wasted in mediocrity. He realized that the price of not acting was much higher than any course or investment he had ever refused. With every "I can't," he uttered, he was, in fact, paying with his freedom and with his family's future. The cost of omission was a silent debt that grew at extremely high interest, corroding his soul and his chances to prosper. He was losing his life for fear of investing the money that, ironically, would only come through that initial investment. The realization hit when he understood that the people he admired didn't wait to have money to invest. They invested to have money. The risk of continuing exactly where he was began to seem far more terrifying than the risk of losing a few reais. He saw that he was buying his own stagnation every day he chose the cheapest and safest path. The voice of scarcity, which once seemed like a prudent advisor, now sounded like the jailer of a cell without bars. Samuel felt the weight of all the doors he himself had closed by feeling unworthy of crossing the portal of success. Anger began to boil in his chest as he noticed that time would not return to give him back the lost chances. He could no longer accept the excuse of lack of resources while seeing people with less than him building empires from scratch. The problem was never the empty bank balance, but the miserly mind that refused to see beyond physical limitations. He decided that he needed to break this cycle of mental bankruptcy before time sealed his fate definitively. However, to unlearn the pattern of scarcity, he would have to face a challenge that would brutally test his faith. Samuel realized that the only way to silence the voice of scarcity was through an action that challenged his survival logic. He decided that he would no longer wait for ideal conditions, because he understood that comfort is the greatest enemy of real growth. Instead of focusing on what he could lose, he began to clearly visualize everything he could achieve if he changed his posture. The pain of remaining the same finally became greater than the fear of risking the little he still had left. He was ready to trade his mediocre security for the Tiwai's uncertainty of a promising future full of abundance. The first practical step was to invest in himself, even if that meant giving up immediate and momentary pleasures. He felt a chill in his stomach when he made that payment that his old mind classified as an unnecessary and dangerous expense. At that moment, he was not just buying knowledge, but sending a powerful signal to his own subconscious. He was declaring that he was worthy of success and that he would no longer accept the crumbs that life offered him. The sense of power that came after this decision was something he had never experienced in his entire journey. The change in attitude began to attract new looks and conversations that previously seemed distant and completely outside his reality. He stopped frequenting environments where the main topic was crisis and began seeking minds that talked about solutions. The frequency of abundance requires a social sacrifice that Samuel was now willing to pay without looking back or regretting it. He understood that to level up, he would need to leave behind the emotional anchors that kept him at the bottom of the well. But he would soon discover that the universe would test his new mindset in the most challenging way possible. Soon after his first major decision, Samuel was hit by a sequence of unforeseen events that seemed designed to test his new routine. The car broke down, an unexpected bill arrived, and the voice of scarcity whispered again that he had made a fatal mistake. It was the moment when most people give up and run back to the false security of habitual mediocrity. Samuel felt the weight of doubt crushing his shoulders, trying to convince him that he was not born to truly prosper. The fear of having spent what he couldn't now screamed in his ears during sleepless nights. He realized that the universe always sends one last test of resistance before opening the floodgates of a new financial reality. Giving into that panic would mean accepting that his mind still belonged to the world of lack and constant despair. Instead of panicking, he decided to double down on discipline and absolute focus on the solutions he was seeking. He learned that scarcity does not die without a fight, and that it uses fear as its most powerful weapon of control. Samuel decided that he would not retreat, even if the ground beneath his feet seemed about to disappear completely. With every no he said to fear, a new layer of internal authority was built into his once fragile character. He began to see problems not as walls, but as steps necessary to strengthen his emotional and mental muscles. The need for money was still real, but the desperation that once paralyzed him had been replaced by strategic calm. He was learning to negotiate with life from a position of power and no longer of supplication. However, he had no idea that the next encounter would permanently change his definition of wealth and real value. One afternoon, Samuel crossed paths with a mentor who didn't offer him money, but a perspective he had never imagined. The man explained that true wealth is not in what you keep, but in what you are capable of generating through movement. Samuel realized that successful people don't focus on the cost of entry, but on the infinite return that knowledge provides. That conversation was the final nail in the coffin of his scarcity mindset, revealing a world of absolute abundance. He understood that the universe is an ocean of opportunities waiting for those who have the courage to dive deep. The voice that once said, "I can't afford it," was replaced by a powerful question. How can I make this possible? This change in language changed the chemistry of his brain, activating a creativity that had been dormant for decades of inertia. He began to see resources where he once saw only problems, and partnerships where he once saw only unfair competition. Financial lack was losing control over his decisions, giving way to a strategic, long-term vision. Samuel was finally learning to read the invisible code that governs the creation of wealth and real success. Samuel's energy changed in such a way that opportunities began knocking on his door without him needing to beg. He no longer exuded the smell of desperation, but the confidence of someone who knows that the value he carries is valuable. Invitations to projects he once considered unattainable began to arise naturally and surprisingly for everyone around him. He realized that the bank account is just a delayed reflection of the clarity and boldness that inhabit the mind. However, the biggest leap of his life was still to come, requiring a decision that would seal his new destiny. By investing in the knowledge he once judged expensive, he unlocked skills that multiplied his capital exponentially and quickly. The voice of scarcity, which for years kept him in an invisible cell, was now nothing more than a weak and completely irrelevant whisper. He saw his physical reality transform to mirror the clarity and audacity that now dominated his daily thoughts. The wall of absolute poverty had fallen, revealing a horizon of possibilities that he previously couldn't even dream of. His bank account ceased to be a source of anxiety and became a tool of impact and expansion in his new life. He was no longer the man who avoided investments out of fear of loss, but the strategist who sought continuous growth. The people around him noticed the transformation and began to seek his guidance to also escape their own mental prisons. Samuel realized that his greatest asset was not the goods he accumulated, but the mindset that no one could ever take from him. He had moved from survival to total mastery of his destiny, becoming the pillar of abundance for his family. Today, when he looks back, he feels compassion for the man who once said he couldn't afford his own future. He understood that the price of mediocrity is always more expensive than the investment necessary to achieve real freedom. The cycle of bankruptcy was broken, and a new lineage of prosperity began to be written through his decisive actions. Samuel didn't just change his life. He proved that scarcity is a lie told by those who fear their own greatness. His journey ends, but yours is just beginning, waiting for the decision that will change everything today. How many times have you let a door close because you focused on the price and not on the value of the transformation that was right before your eyes? The voice of scarcity will continue whispering in your ear, trying to keep you safe in the misery you already know so well. But now you know the truth. "I can't afford it" is just the excuse your mind uses to protect you from the fear of winning. The real cost of not acting today is spending the rest of your days imagining how your life could have been different. What will you decide today? Continue saving crumbs while your life slips through your hands, or invest in the mindset that will build your empire? Knowledge. If you are tired of being a hostage to lack of money and have decided that today is the day of your turning point, write, "I am the source of my abundance," in the comments. Don't put off until tomorrow the decision that can save your future and your family's legacy once and for all. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because the next video might be the tool you were missing to finally cross the portal of success. Remember, money flows to those who have the courage to act while others only watch and complain about luck. Until the next video.